Congratulations everyone, because when this video goes live, we are on the precipice of a brand new year. We are rolling in the end of 2021 and crossing over into 2022 with a reflection on the games that I have played the most of in calendar year 2021. I thought this would be kind of a cool way of reflecting on the last year, taking a look at some of these games and seeing what were some of the highlights of what I was able to get to the table. So without further ado, here is our top 10, really top 12 games that I have played by quantity in 2021, starting with a three-way tie for number 10 with Azul, Kingdom Rush, Rift in Time, and Spirit Island. So there are a lot of reasons why these games got played. If you know me, then you know my favorite game of all time in many regards. It's kind of like a three-way tie in its own respect with a couple other games, but Spirit Island is really in my heart of hearts. It's a game that even if I'm not doing any review coverage of it, I'm going to make sure that it gets played. It's a game that I love introducing new people to. It's a game that I love solo and playing multiplayer. It has unending amount of replayability, and the synergy between the thematic resonance and the mechanical aspect of it, the clockworkian puzzle as you figure out every single scenario, is just outstanding. So of course I was going to prioritize making sure that even though it's a bigger game, it was going to get to the table several times this year. And then we have kind of the flip side, Azul. Azul is not a solo game, and it is a game that is very tight and concise and nice and beautiful. And 2021 was really the year that I truly fell in love with Azul. I'd played Azul and Sagrada in the past, and I had played Azul Summer Pavilion, but because of just where we were at, we wanted a nice, easy abstract that we could get to the table again and again, and that's one that we kept on coming back to. It was also good to introduce with a couple visitors that we were able to have while trying to stay safely quarantined and observing safety restrictions in 2021. It's really just one of the best abstract games that has ever been made, and because of its elegance and cohesiveness and the outstanding visual presentation, I think this is going to be an evergreen game that we can anticipate being available for 20 years plus down the road. Now, Kingdom Rush Rift in Time, this was kind of a last minute thing. It came during the later part of 2021 that I got a review copy of it, and I'd never played Kingdom Rush, the video game, the mobile game before, and I kind of stumbled my way into this review by way of being just a huge fan of tower defense games, which in the review I even mentioned going all the way back to Final Fantasy VII's Fort Condor minigame. Any of you guys remember what I'm talking about with that? You know what I'm talking about. Tower defense is just a spectacular format for games. I think Kingdom Rush is the most successful that I've ever seen this genre, this entire video game genre being adapted into a tabletop game format. And the fact that they were able to overcome the multitudes of enemies problem by having each card representative of tons of different enemies, and the nugget, the germ of the gameplay mechanic being the tetromino spatial arrangement damage that's applied to those multitudes of enemies, is such a brilliant way of capturing that without making a complete mess of the table. Really impressed by Kingdom Rush. Now, coming up at another tie for placement, we have a two-way tie for 8th place with Whitehall Mystery and Between Two Castles of Mad King Ludwig. Both excellent games, and both games that I was so happy to be able to cover this year. Now, Whitehall Mystery is a game that I got for my birthday way back in April, and I played it a lot, which is why it's on this list. It felt like such a revelation when I played it, because I played a lot of hidden movement games in the past, and I really enjoy the genre. But the genre itself has become kind of bloated. There's an expectation of a lot of baggage in hidden movement games, and being that one of my earliest board gaming memories was sitting on my mom's lap and playing Scotland Yard. There's something intrinsic about that experience that I wanted to latch on to, but without having to deal with the enormous baggage that these games tend to have. Don't get me wrong, I love Letters from Whitechapel. I love Fury of Dracula or Hunt for the Ring, but having an extremely distilled experience like Whitehall Mystery, where it just cuts down to the most bare bones aspect of that game, where you are removing all of the barriers to the fun and just emphasizing the cold, hard deduction aspects, is so brilliant. The game is so easy to teach. It plays in a short amount of time and delivers all of that experience of hunting down your subject or avoiding the people hunting you if you're on the other side, while not really having to worry about all of the other larger game elements that this genre tends to have. I think Whitehall Mystery is one of the most brilliant games that I've ever played as far as distilling a larger concept into its most germane elements. And between Two Castles and Mad King Ludwig, dude, come on. This game is so good. I mean, it did have an expansion come out this year, and that expansion is really good, and I highly recommend it. But even in its base game form, it is just a stellar tile placement game. I think it's better than either of its respective parents, being Between Two Cities or Castles of Mad King Ludwig. And it has this amazing opulent theme that just brings me joy. I also really think that it is the successor to Sushi Go and Seven Wonders as far as a strategic game that you can play in large player counts without really bogging down the game at all. Between Two Castles is, as far as I'm concerned, one of the unsung heroes of the tabletop gaming world, and I think one of the best games in Stonemeyer's entire catalog, and that's saying something. Now we're going to get away from the ties for a while because number 7 is Terraforming Mars Ares Expedition. Terraforming Mars is another one of those games which is in my like 3-way tie for greatest games of all time, and Ares Expedition is kind of like what Whitehall Mystery is to Letters from Whitechapel. It is just like a condensed and succinct version. It doesn't completely strip things away, and it does add new mechanics to it. There's new systems, but Ares Expedition is one of those games where it does remove some of the things I love most about Terraforming Mars. Like, I love the milestone system that's not there, the awards. I actually like some of the jockeying for position on the planet itself, but nonetheless, what it gets me is almost like an accelerated version of all of the card play from Terraforming Mars, and I can feel like I am the god emperor of Mars with my infinite production on hand, and I go from struggling to get even a single terraforming point to being at the end of the game just getting colossal amounts of points as I am converting this planet into a viable, let's just say, customer. And now I'm sad that the greatest human endeavor that mankind might ever endure would just result in companies owning portions of space. Number 6 is one of the games that I'm asked about most on this channel, where people are like, yo, are you going to play some Arkham Horror LCG and talk about it? And I'd be like, I've played it, but I don't care about it because the model is just infuriating and I don't want to participate in cycles and little blister packs and that kind of stuff. Well, I just posted a video about why I suddenly care about Arkham Horror now that they have changed their model and made a much more beginner-friendly, much more consumer-friendly revised core edition, which is quite excellent. I played the game throughout the years, but finally it makes more sense to me and my family and my situation. And so now I'm happy to report that I'm playing a lot of one of the best horror games, one of the best Lovecraftian games on the market, probably the best LCG, though I am kind of debating between that and Marvel Champions. They provide very different things to me, and it's just one of the best delivery mechanisms for narrative intrigue in a cooperative form in tabletop gaming right now. I'm all about Arkham Horror LCG. Number 5 was my other birthday present because Mrs. TCbH is just that cool. I got The King is Dead 2nd edition, and whew, like Whitehall Mystery, this is another reduction, or I guess like Terraforming Mars Ares Expedition as well, where this is a reduction of an overall genre. Area controlled, somewhat elements of coin games, conceptually, I don't know. Bringing in the whole PAX Premier alt area control game into this reduced form that is so potent and so exciting that makes me feel Machiavellian every time that I'm playing it. This is a game that I've taught to my mother-in-law, I've taught to my brother, I've taught to anyone who I can, who I feel safe interacting with during quarantine. I've been like, yo, we gotta play The King is Dead. And I am so excited and thrilled to play it every single time. It's a game where I can explain it in about 5 minutes to anyone, and they're going to be like, I don't know that there's really that much game in here. And then by the end of the game, they're like, dude, we got to play that again and maybe again, because I know exactly where I went wrong and what I'm going to do to you next time, because you better not switch Wessex over here. It's a great game. I think if anyone likes interesting puzzles and feeling somewhat deceitful, even if you are kind of adverse to combat games, this isn't really a combat game. This is more like speculation and manipulation of different elements to see your ends come to fruition. I can't recommend The King is Dead enough. Number 4 is a surprising game to me. It's a game that I didn't really see coming out of anywhere, and then I was given a review copy and I fell in love. This is where we're getting back into the 2021 was still part of the COVID pandemic, which who knows when that is going to end. I played a lot of solo games this year, and as a product, I played a lot of Veilwraith this year, which is such an interesting game. And I know there are a lot of people who think that All or Nothing is all about the Kill Forth series, which there's another one coming on Kickstarter right as we speak right now, or right as I'm speaking, and should be up while this video still goes up. But Veilwraith is a much more fluid mechanical puzzle, and it has this interesting campaign attached to it, and it is a very difficult game. Very difficult, especially once you get into the expansion stuff. Like Absolution is like, ugh, it took me forever to get past scenario 6. But it's a game that plays in about 20 minutes if you're playing solo, and it's highly addictive. You want to play it again and again and again. It's a game that has a beautiful, distinct presentation, unlike anything else. One of the best solo-only games that I've played of all time. Coming in at a tie for number 2, we have another card game that I've played a lot of solo, which if you've seen my social media, that kind of stuff, you can probably guess is Marvel Champions, and then a dark horse contender, Adventure Tactics. So we'll start with MC here. So Marvel Champions, it's another LCG, similar to Arkham Horror. It's another game by Fantasy Flight Games. It does a lot of similar things that, or it plays in same territories that people may be thinking of. But to me, it's a much more one-off game. There's not really a campaign associated with it, and it is so easy to bust out a solo game, kind of like Veilwraith. And being able to play through even the quasi campaigns that come with a box, like I played through the Rise of the Red Skull this year, and some of the Infinity Gauntlet this year. If I found myself with 20-25 minutes, just bust out a game of that. It's fun just tooling up some quick heroes. There's not much to think about as far as deck building or deck construction out of it. The pre-constructed decks are great, and being able to just mix and match the different sets of cards with the different heroes is really brilliant. The villains also bring a lot of really interesting challenges. It's a lot easier to get to the table than Arkham Horror LCG, and Arkham is a game that I actually prefer to play with my wife, which means I'm restricted to more specific situations in which I'm going to play that, whereas Marvel Champions is a game where I'll play solo, I'll play with other people, I'll play at any time. If I just have a quick moment and I want to get my superhero thing on, boom, Marvel Champions is it. And then there's Adventure Tactics, the number 2 game that I played this year. I'm so happy that it's Adventure Tactics because Letterman Games really knocked it out of the park with this thing. There are a few production issues with the game. That's true. But they're making good with the newest Kickstarter on some of those production issues. And even if those exist, they are more than made up for with an excellent system. That's my dog groaning in her sleep. She's a puppy. I don't know if that matters. They more than made up for it with an excellent system that just encourages you to explore leveling up in a way that I never really enjoyed in other tabletop games. Usually I'm the type of person who selects a class and I just fulfill that class to the end, but the intuitive way in which you level up in all these different classes and combine and discover new things, just making your characters that much more potent, is such a brilliant system that I would want to see that adopted into tons more games. I mean, the Adventure Tactics alone hits on my heartstrings because I love Final Fantasy Tactics, which was one of the direct inspirations for the games, but also it's a really well designed multi-dimensional campaign in which you have weaving paths, you're making decisions outside of the scenarios themselves, and the outcomes of the scenarios can impact how you move forward. And then, like I said, that level up system is kind of unbelievable. It's a game that as soon as I finish one campaign of that, I was looking forward to playing the next campaign, which this Friday I'm going to start with another group, a campaign of Adventure Tactics. It's such a triumph to me in terms of matching accessibility with really high level concepts. One of my favorite games this year and one of my favorite campaign games of all time. And that brings me to number 1, which I think is very fitting, Dune Imperium. Yes, it's a darling as far as a tabletop game, but also this is the year that the movie, the Denis Villeneuve adaptation of Dune, came out, triumphantly overachieving the expectations that people had, doubting that it could possibly be the smash hit that was necessary in order to have another movie be planned out. And it is here, and I, as a major Dune fan, someone who has been into Dune for so long, am so excited to just revel in all of the new fans to the fiction, all the attention that's being given in spaces like tabletop gaming and media, and just that we had an awesome flick come out this year. So Dune Imperium is just a fantastic worker placement game. It plays great solo. The majority of the plays that I've done this year have been 2 or 3 player, and it has kind of taken that comfort food worker placement zone over that used to be occupied by Lords of Waterdeep. I still love Lords of Waterdeep, don't get me wrong, but this is that really nice, accessible, but still multi-layered and interesting take on worker placement that I go to as kind of my comfort food, my home zone when it comes to games. I think the presentation is great. I think the fact that it is riffing on the visual presentation and aesthetic of the movies while still having its own independent artwork is really fantastic. And the mashup of worker placement, a little bit of auction / area control type thing going on, and also worker placement is so cohesively designed. Dune Imperium is the cat's pajamas. It's everything that everyone says, and I'm so glad that I got to play a ton of it. And that's it. That is our top 12 games by count of number of plays that I've had this year. But I'm interested to hear, what are the games that you played? What are the games that you think I should prioritize for playing in 2022 that we haven't covered on this channel, or you think are classics that I should just get to the table again? And As always, I just want to say thank you so much for another year of supporting the Cardboard Herald. Your support, your encouragement, your feedback has meant the world to me. Have a safe end to 2021 and have an amazing 2022. Thanks for watching. I've been Jack for the Cardboard Herald.